Happy birthday. 10 years ago, your father paid me $1 million to marry you. The contract is over, the husband shouted in front of all the guests, threw the ring in my face, and walked away from mine holiday. Everyone froze in shock. I was standing, humiliated, as suddenly from the table, the father's old lawyer stood up and said, My Ladina, your father foresaw this. He said that your real inheritance will come into force only after these words. What my husband did after that. Hello, write in the comments, where are you from? Don't forget to subscribe and like. Enjoy listening. The evening was perfect, simply perfect. I was turning 39, and Lazar, my husband, rented the best restaurant in the city of Imperial. The entire hall was drowning in white lilies, mine favorite colors. Their heavy, sweet aroma mixed with the smell of something expensive. Perfume and hot wax from hundreds of candles. All our friends have gathered, relatives, laser partners business, about 50 people no less, the most respected people of the city. I felt yourself as a queen. I sat at the head of the table in her new silk dress, the color of ivory, next to her husband. Lazarus, the whole evening, was the embodiment of care, that he'll fix my hair, then pour some more into my glass. Champagne, then with a smile he will squeeze mine hand. 10 years of marriage. 10 years. For many it's an eternity, but for me they are. Flew by like one happy day. I looked at him, handsome and confident in myself, and thought, here it is, my happiness. Quiet, reliable, real, father would be pleased. He always wanted, for I want exactly this kind of life, stable, secure, without upheavals. At the table, my cousin was sitting opposite Edita. She caught my eye and she smiled encouragingly, raising her glass. We are with. She was close to him since childhood, as native sisters. She was mine, the only support after the death of his father. Next to her, a little further down, sat Olympiada Baskakov, mother of Lazar. How always, straight back, cold look, impeccable hairstyle. She never really didn't show me any sympathy. But today, even she looked almost pleased, looking around the richly decorated hall. The waiters carried the dish silently. Conversations flowed like a river. Laughter rang out. Someone made short, warm toasts. I felt it spreading throughout my body, pleasant warmth from the champagne and from everyone's attention. Everything was correct. Everything was in its place. I was Maya and Ladina, the wife of Lazar Baskakov, respected woman, the mistress of this. Have a wonderful evening. And then came the moment of the main toast. Lazarus rose from his place. He tapped the knife on. Glass, calling for silence. Conversations instantly died down. All views rushed towards him. He looking great in his expensive suit with a snow-white shirt. He looked around the room with his charming smile that makes me. My heart always sank. Dear friends, my dears, he began, and his voice deep and the velvet filled the hall. We gathered. Here today to congratulate my happy birthday to my beautiful wife, my Maya birth. He paused and looked at me. Something flashed in his eyes, strange. Something I've never done before I saw it, but I chalked it up to excitement. 10 years, he continued, and his voice became a little louder. Exactly 10 years ago, I stood just like that in front of a lot of people and promised to love and take care of this woman. For 10 years, I played my role-loving husband. There was someone nervous in the room, chuckled, deciding that this was the beginning of something jokes. I smiled weakly too, though something inside was squeezing unpleasantly. What? So, did he play a role? Lazarus no longer smiled. His face became hard, almost strangers. For 10 years I lived a lie, in a lie, which was invented by her late father, respected by all, Artur Ladin. He was a great businessman, isn't he? He knew how. Make profitable deals, and our smile, the wedding, was his best deal. Silence in the hall became dead. It was possible to hear how. The candles are humming. I looked at my husband and me slowly, as if in a nightmare. The meaning of his words began to sink in. The smile froze on his face, turning into an ugly grimace. He bought me. Voice Lazar burst into tears. He is no longer. Looked at me. He addressed everything hall, to each guest personally. Your everyone's favorite Arthur Layden paid me. A guy from a simple family, $1 million. $1 million so that I could marry his daughter. So that I could provide her with a decent life, status, position in society, because he knew that she herself was of no use to anyone needed. The words hit me like stones. Every syllable left a bruise on the soul. $1 million. Contract. I don't do anything new. I couldn't breathe. The air in the hall became thick and viscous. I saw the guest's eyes wide open in horror, the mother-in-law's face distorted with anger. The Olympics, which seemed not to be at all, was surprised. Only Edita looked at me with genuine sympathy, pressing hand to mouth. 10 years, he continued. Shout Lazarus. His face turned purple. I put up with this for 10 years. Lived with a woman which I did not choose. Smiled when I wanted to howl, and all for the sake of money. But the contract expired today. Happy day, birthday, darling. You are free, and I, free. He took a step towards me. I instinctively sank into a chair. His eyes burned with hatred, real animal hatred. Hatred. Happy birthday. 10 years back, your father paid me $1 million so that I would marry you. Contract finished. He shouted the last words, right into my ear. Face. The whole hall heard them. The whole city now he will know them. And then he did what finally destroyed me. With a sharp movement, he tore it off his finger wedding ring. Golden rim, which I put on his finger for 10 years back, sparkled in the candlelight. Take it, he hissed. You can sell it his. You will add to your inheritance. And he threw the ring in my face. Small. A piece of metal hit me painfully cheek. I screamed, rather from humiliation than from pain. The ring fell with a clang. Plate and bounced onto the snow-white tablecloth. He turned around and, pushing dumbfounded waiters, went to exit. The restaurant door slammed shut behind him. There was a girl standing, in the hall. Absolute ringing silence. 50 pairs of eyes looked at me, at my burning face, on the ring lying on the tablecloth. On mine. Trembling hands. Nobody moved. Nobody didn't breathe. I was an exhibit in a museum own shame. Every second of this. The silence lasted forever. I felt how their gazes stripped me naked, delve into my humiliation. Then the whispering began. At first, quiet as the rustling of dry leaves, and then louder and louder. People started looking at each other, covering their mouths with their palms. Someone stood up, wanting to leave as soon as possible. My ideal. Evening, my perfect life collapsed in 1 minute. I sat there, petrified, and could not utter a word. I wanted to. Fall through the ground, disappear, evaporate, and at that moment, when it seemed that things couldn't get any worse, from a table in the far corner of the room, a figure rose. It was Sebastian Vavilov, my father's old lawyer. To him, he was already over 70. He was dry and tall, an old man with completely gray hair and with piercing eyes. He rarely appeared in public, and I was surprised that he accepted mine invitation. He walked slowly through the whole room, straight towards me. The sweat died down. All froze again, watching him. He came up to our table, walked around it, and stopped next to me. He didn't look at me with pity, like others. The look was serious and focused. He leaned over, and his voice came through in the dead silence of the hall. It was surprisingly loud and distinctly. Maya Ladina. I could only nod, unable to tear myself away from his sight. Your father foresaw this, he said firmly, without a shadow of a doubt. He said that your real inheritance will come into force only after these words. Precisely after these. Walked through the hall a collective sigh, like a hiss. Everyone who was about to leave froze. On sight. What inheritance? That's all this means? I looked at Sebastian Vavilov on his wrinkled and inscrutable face and did not understand anything. My world was just destroyed grounds. My husband betrayed me in the most cruel way. My life turned out to be a farce. And in this, the old man stood in front of me and said that all this was just the beginning. That. The humiliation I just experienced in front of the whole city. It was not the end, but some pre-planned key to something else. It was beyond my comprehension. It was some kind of madness. Lawyer, paying no attention to them, calmly said, I'll be waiting for you. Tomorrow in my office. At 10 a.m. No be late. Then he also slowly turned around and walked straight towards the exit, like a stick, without looking back. His departure as if he had lifted everyone's stupor. The hall exploded with a roar. People are no longer whispered. They spoke in full voice without hesitation. Someone was hastily collecting things. Someone approached the neighboring one's tables to share impressions. The holiday was over. Now it has begun show. Edita jumped up to me. Her face was pale. There were tears in my eyes. May. Oh my God, Maya. Let's get out of here, I beg you. She grabbed my hand. Her fingers were icy. We can't stay here. Let's go. I let her lead me away. I moved like a doll, not feeling her legs. We walked through the hall, and I felt hundreds of views. They dug into back of the head. I didn't raise my head. I only looked at my shoes, which walked on an expensive carpet, past the tables with untouched food, past the overturned one's glasses, past white lilies, which suddenly began to smell not of a holiday, but funeral. There's night air outside hit me in the face, but didn't bring relief. Edita helped me get into the car herself, got behind the wheel. We were driving in Night City. Bright shop windows, lights of lanterns, headlights of oncoming cars. Everything merged into one blurry, indifferent spot. In there was some quiet music playing in the car, but I didn't listen to it. I heard. The scream was still ringing in my ears. Lazarus and his last words. Contract finished. The house greeted us with a resounding noise, oppressive silence. That same house that Lazar and I chose together, where each vase, every picture on the wall was part of our common history. Stories which, as it turned out, never existed. Edita made tea and tried something calm down, but her words do not reach me. I was sitting on the sofa in living room and looked at one point. When she left, promising to come back in the morning to take me to a lawyer, there was silence unbearable. I went up to the second floor, to our bedroom. His things were lying on their places, suit thrown over armchair, book on the bedside table. Everything is as usual, as if he just went out just a minute and he'll be back any minute. I walked up to closet and opened the door. His clothes hung in even rows. I ran my hand over the fabric of his jacket. 10 years. Lie. $1 million. I didn't sleep all night, just lay in the dark, looking to the ceiling, and scrolled again and again. I have that evening in my head. Every word, every sight. Humiliation burned like fire, somewhere in chest. And under this fire, like an icy snake, another question was stirring. What did he mean? Advocate? What other inheritance? In the morning, I felt completely broken. Edita, true to her word, stopped by me. She was quiet and caring, helped me choose clothes because I just stood in front of the closet and didn't. I could figure out what needed to be done. Office Sebastian Vavilov was in the old building in the city center. Heavy oak, door, plate with worn gold letters. It smelled like old paper inside, skin, and something else elusively familiar from childhood. That's how it smelled in my office father. Vavilov himself sat behind a massive desk littered with folders. He raised his faded eyes to me, and he nodded towards the chair opposite. Coffee? He asked dryly. I am silent, shook her head. He was silent for a minute, studying my face carefully. First, I felt like an insect under microscope. Before we get down to business, he began. His voice was just as even and as emotionless as yesterday. I have to fulfill your father's last will. He pulled out a desk drawer and took it out, an old yellowed envelope. On it, in a familiar, sweeping handwriting, it was one word as written, Maya. Heart missed the blow. This is my father's handwriting. He insisted that I read it to you specifically in this moment. Not earlier and not later, said the lawyer, putting on his glasses and carefully opened the envelope. He took out a folded 4 sheets of paper. He started reading, and the father's voice seemed to sound in the silence. Office. My dear daughter, my May, if you hear these words, it means what I was waiting for and fearing all happened. These years, Lazarus showed his true colors face. I know you're in pain. I know you feel betrayed and destroyed. Forgive me for this pain, but I had to do it. I dug my fingers into armrests of the chair. What he should have. Do this? He knew. Vavilov continued, read in an even voice. I saw you, my dear. You lived in a golden cage, which I built for you myself. Comfortable, safe, but still a cage. You were content with your quiet life, her predictable husband. But the Ladens don't create it for a quiet life. In our blood. Struggle, and you forgot about it. I couldn't leave you my legacy while you was comfortable and protected. You wouldn't. Dealt with it. You were needed test by fire. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but these were not tears of self-pity, but bitter, burning resentment. My own father. He planned everything, my whole life. Public execution. I knew that Lazarus, a weak and greedy person, sooner or later his envy and resentment that he bought, they would have broken out. 10 years it turned out to be enough. I set this up humiliation, this crucible, as they say. The English to burn your old one to the ground life. Only after experiencing this betrayal, when you have nothing to lose, you can be. Forged into the woman who's strong enough to lead, strong enough to protect what I left. This is not the end of you, May. This is your beginning. The lawyer fell silent and folded the letter. He took off his glasses and looked. On me, that's all, he said. I was sitting stunned. Lazarus's betrayal faded into the background this. My husband turned out to be just a pawn in my father's cruel game. Father whom I idolized, the one who seemed to me an example of love and care, sacrificed me, my happiness, my reputation for the sake of some monstrous plan of his own. What inheritance? I squeezed it out myself, and the voice sounded alien. Sebastian Vavilov opened the thick folder that was lying in front of him. Your true inheritance, Maya Arturovna. This is 100% right. Ownership of Leyden perfumes. I froze. Perfumery. Old factory grandfather whom the father supported rather from sentimental considerations than for the sake of profit. I remembered her from childhood. Smells essential oils, huge copper alembics, rows of dark bottles in the cool basement. It was the heart of our family, her story. After the death of his father, management took over. Lazarus took himself. I didn't get involved in the affairs. With this day, you are her only one and the rightful owner, he continued. Lawyer turning the page. However, there are conditions. He put his glasses back on. According to the will. For now, the company is on the verge of bankruptcy. It is burdened with enormous debts. Your father did not do it deliberately interfere with management in recent years. Debts? What debts? I whispered. Speech we're talking about. Millions, he snapped. Do you have there are exactly 3 months to do it, the enterprise profitable. If by after this period the perfume is not will come out on top, it will be immediately liquidated and all assets sold hammer for debt collection. You will be left with nothing. 3 months, millions, debts, an enterprise I don't know about, knew absolutely nothing. It wasn't inheritance, it was a noose. Another one, a test devised by my father. He threw me into a cage with tigers to see if I survive. Vavilov pushed several documents towards me. For a signature and a bunch of old keys copper ring. I signed mechanically where he indicated. Took the keys. They were heavy, cold, total weight. The weight of this crumbling world fell on my shoulders. I left his office as if in a dream. In one hand, a letter from my father, in the other, the keys from a ruined business. I went down old stairs and went out into the street. Bright daylight hit my eyes. People, they were in a hurry somewhere, laughing, living their own life. But my life was no more. I took a few steps along the sidewalk, trying to figure out what to do next, where to go. And at that moment, a figure appeared in front of me, a man in a formal business suit. "Maya Ladina?" he asked in an official voice. I nodded, still not understanding what was going on. He handed me a thick envelope. "To you, they asked me to pass it on. Sign here." I automatically took the papers and put them down, some squiggle on his form. He nodded and quickly left, disappearing into crowd. I looked at the envelope, official with the official seal. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside there were several sheets. Claim, application, notice of commencement trial. I ran my eyes through line by line, without delving into the legal aspects terms. Division of property, seizure of accounts. And at the very bottom, in the graphist, I saw a familiar name that made my blood run cold in the veins. Plaintiff Baskakov Lazar Igorevich. He filed a lawsuit. Not the next day after the breakup, and on the same morning when I received her inheritance. Everything was planned. His speech at the restaurant, Mo humiliation, and now it's mine. Inheritance was not just a ruin. It was bait, in a trap. And my husband just slammed it shut. I stood in the middle, busy, sidewalk, and the world around me disappeared. The noise of cars, the voices of passers-by, everything turned into a hum. It was in my head. Absolute ringing emptiness. And then this one, the void was cut by a single one, a thought, sharp and clear as a splinter. Glass, perfumery, keys in your pocket burn the thigh. That's the only thing I'm left, the only place I could go. I don't remember how I caught a taxi. I don't remember as I told the driver the old address on the outskirts of an industrial area. I woke up, only when the car stopped in front of a familiar 3-story building made of red brick, laid in perfumery, inscription. Above the entrance, made in old-fashioned style forged letters, faded and covered dust. I paid the driver and got out. The building looked abandoned. There were several windows. On the first floor broken. The paint on the frames is peeling. This place was once the pride of our cities, the heart of my grandfather's business, and father. Now, it looked like an old man, living out his last days of awakening. I walked up to the heavy oak door. I felt a bunch of keys in my pocket. Hands, they were shaking so much that I could hardly get into keyhole. The key turned with a loud, protesting sound, with a grinding sound. I pushed the door. In the nose, a thick, stale smell hit. Mixture lavender, sandalwood, something tart, citrus, and on top of everything, the smell of dust and dampness. I stepped inside into the semi-darkness. A huge workshop. Sun rays broke through the dirty windows under ceiling, snatching from the darkness the outline of huge copper stills. Cubes similar to giant Eastern ones vessels. Along the walls there were shelves with rows of dark bottles. The silence was so deep that I could hear my heart beating own heart. I went deeper, and my steps echoed loudly in the empty. Space. Everything here was reminiscent of father. Here is the table where he spends hours mixed essences. Here is his old one. A leather apron hanging on a nail. All it remained as it was under him, but life there was no longer anything here. Lazarus killed it. Place. I took out my phone and dialed the only number I could. Edita. My voice sounded hoarse. "May, where are you?" I called around. Her voice was full of anxiety. "I'm at the factory one. Why did you go there?" "Stay there. I'll be there now," she commanded, and hung up. I sat down on some box and grabbed her head with her hands. "What do I need?" "Due. 3 months. Millions in debt. Lawsuit from my husband. It wasn't just a hole. There was an abyss, and I flew right to it. Bottom." Edita arrived 20 minutes later. She flew into the workshop, like a whirlwind, with 2 bags from the grocery store in. Hands. "Well, you found a place for privacy," she said, trying to speak cheerfully. "It's colder here then. On the street. Here I brought hot coffee and buns. You need to eat." She was my salvation, my only one. An island of sanity in this ocean madness. While I was drinking scalding coffee, she looked around busily. "So," she said decisively, "enough become weak. Your father didn't do all this for that. I started it so that you would give in at the first opportunity day. He wanted you to fight, so we will fight. I'm with you. Knows where to begin, Edita. I don't know anything about this. Understand. Accounting. Production. This dark forest. Let's start with the main thing. From the papers," she said, and nodded to the side a small door in the corner of the workshop. "Cabinet the director is somewhere there. Let's go and see what your faithful left here." We entered the office. It was a small one, a room with one window overlooking, overgrown yard, a table, 2 chairs, huge metal filing cabinet. Lazarus clearly didn't bother to aim order. There were stacks of glasses piled up on the table folders. Some shields were just crumpled and thrown into a corner. Edita, she resolutely approached the closet. He was not locked. Well, let's get to the autopsy, she joked darkly, opening it. Doors. The next few days turned into a nightmare. Edita and I arrived at the factory early in the morning and we left late at night. She took on work leave at own expense, saying that can't leave me alone. We sorted it out. This paper chaos. Invoices, delivery notes, bank statements, contracts. The deeper we went, the more frightening it became. Painting. Everything pointed to something monstrous. MS management, as they say, is in full swing incompetence. Suppliers have not been paid for months due to what they refused to ship high-quality raw materials. Taxes were paid from due to delays, huge penalties accumulated. The equipment had not been serviced for years. Lazarus simply let things slide. He was squeezing the last money out of perfumes to maintain her luxurious image. Life without investing a penny in development. He's just an idiot, she said. Edita, throwing another folder with overdue accounts. Untalented manager. How could your father trust? Does it matter to him? I remained silent. I don't know myself, I understood. Maybe the father hoped that. Will Lazarus change? Or is he doing it deliberately? Handed the matter over to the man who would handle it will collapse. My father's letter did not give me peace. I had to do it. One day in the evening, when we were already getting ready to leave completely exhausted, my gaze fell on my father's old desk, which stood in the corner of the office, littered with some kind of junk. Lazarus, apparently. I used the new one and just left this one behind gathered dust. Wait, I said to Edita. Let's see what's there. We moved from IT boxes and old catalogs. Table was made of solid oak, the same as in Vavilov's office. I started pull out drawers mechanically. Empty, paper clips, dried out pen. And suddenly one of the lower drawers jammed. He advanced 2/3 SRDs and stood up. I tugged harder. It's useless. Let me. Edita came up and pulled too. The box was not supplied. I sank down knees to look into the crack. Something interfered. I put my hand inside end. I felt some unevenness with my fingers back wall. It wasn't the back wall box, but some kind of board, false panel. My heart started pounding. I clicked on it. There was a quiet click. The panel gave way, revealing a small secret niche. Inside, deep in the box, there was something lying there that shouldn't have been there. Thin ledger and hardcover black binding. Not like everyone else the rest, not shabby, not stained coffee. She looked almost new. I got her. My hands were shaking slightly. I opened the first page. It wasn't just a storm. It was neat, detailed log, and records were kept in it the last 2 years. I started reading and a chill ran down my spine. Edita looked over my shoulder and I heard her ragged breathing. The first part of the magazine was dedicated to large loans. Very large. Tens of thousands of dollars taken some company unknown to me. Dates, amounts, contract numbers. And under each one, the operation had a signature, clear, Lazar's confident signature. These loans was not in any official paper. There was black money that was passing by cash desks. And then the worst thing began. The second part of the book, purchase of raw materials. Whole the pages were covered with titles ingredients, but these were not the ones. Noble oils of Bulgarian rose, Florentine iris, grass jasmine, on which the reputation of Ladine was built. Perfumery. These were cheap synthetic analogs. Cheap chemicals, and they all bought from the same place, supplier whose name I saw for the first time. They bought tons for cash, for the very same money borrowed. First I turned page after page, and the picture became more and more clear and monstrous. He has been doing it systematically for 2 years. Replaced expensive natural ingredients, cheap synthetics. There was a difference in price colossal. Where did this money go? Answer was obvious. The debt that Vavilov spoke of was just the tip of the iceberg. The debt pit dug by Lazarus was in, times deeper, and it was done intentionally. I closed the book. In my ears was making noise. Edita was silent, shocked, and then I realized it wasn't talentless management. It was not incompetence or negligence. Every step was thought out, every loan, every cheap purchase, every signature. It was a cold, methodical plan. Destruction. Lazarus didn't just manage poorly business. He purposefully, step by step, for 2 years, he led the perfumery to bankruptcy. He was killing her from the inside. I did it on purpose, I whispered, more for himself than for Edita. He knew, what does it do? But why? Edita sat down chair. Her face was whiter than chalk. Why does he need it? Destroy what fed him. This is pointless. I shook my head. There was a point. It's just me. I haven't seen him yet. But I felt him, how to feel the cold breath of a predator in the darkness. It wasn't just revenge, humiliated husband. It was part of something bigger, more terrible. What now? What should I do? Edita asked. With this book, you can go to the police. This is the same fraud. And what are we going to tell? I smiled bitterly that my husband took loans for the company he managed. They will say, this is a business dispute, and his signature is on every contract. And while they're sorting it out, my 3 months will expire. It wasn't in vain that my father put such a period. He knew I wouldn't have it. Time for trials. So, we need to find money. Adita jumped up again. She's not could sit still. It needs to be blocked. These debts. Go to the bank and take it. Secured loan. Anything. I just shook her head. A pledge of what? At home. Lazar has already filed for division of property. The house is probably under. Arrest. The pledge of perfumery. Who will give? A loan to a business that is about to sink? The next day, as if in confirmation of my worst fears, the bell rang. They called from the main office. Citibank. A cold, indifferent female voice reported that in connection with the change management of Layden Perfumery and information received about her instability financial situation, the bank requires immediate and full repayment. The main credit line, the very same one official, which I also spoke about Vavilov, but according to the contract of payments, should be monthly, I started. There is clause 7.4 in the contract, the woman said. The bank has the right to demand early repayment of the entire amounts in case of risks arising, threatening the borrower's solvency. You are given 10 working days. Otherwise, in this case, we initiate the collection procedure collateral property, that is, the building and equipment perfumery. She hung up for 10 days. I had 10 days to find the amount equal to the cost of several apartments in Center. That was the end Lazarus knew about at this point. He was waiting for me to join rights to strike this blow. He is not. He just sank the ship, he also called. Sharks. The news spread throughout the city the speed of the fire. I don't know how. Maybe one of the bank clerks blabbed. Maybe Lazarus himself took care of it. But by the evening, I started to feel it. I stopped by the store for groceries, and the saleswoman who she knew me for 10 years and always seemed to be in a blur. In a smile, she suddenly pretended that she didn't notice as me. 2 women in line, seeing me, they demonstratively turned away and began to whisper loudly. They say she's become really bad. Father's business, I ruined it in a month, and her husband ran away from her, they say, endured. She drove him crazy. Every word stung like a wasp. I quit basket and ran out of the store. I sat in the car, and my hands started shaking. They don't. They were just discussing my divorce, they accused me. Lazarus has not only destroyed me in the eyes of my friends at the bottom, birth. Now he was destroying mine reputation throughout the city. He transformed me from a victim to a culprit, an incompetent, hysterical woman, which threw the legacy to the wind great father. I was driving home and it seemed like there was something looking at me from every window, condemning eyes look at me. My city, which has always been my home, turned into hostile territory. I called it home. Go, they're all they know, I said, barely holding back tears. The whole town says it's me I'm guilty. Spit on them, she replied hotly. The dogs bark, the caravan moves on. Us, we need to act. I called a couple acquaintances. Maybe someone will agree to give on credit. It's no use, I answered dully. Nobody will give it. Not for such a case. In the evening, Edita came to see me. She looked tired and angry. You were right. Nobody wants to hear it. How? They just find out what kind of enterprise we're talking about, straight into the bushes. Lazar did a good job. He told everyone that perfume was black hole. We were sitting in the kitchen in full silence. Something had to be done. Despair is a bad advisor. It was necessary think, coldly irrational. That hidden debt, I said suddenly. The one in the black book is the creditor. Who he? Maybe we can come to an agreement with him? About deferment? Edita looked at me. Do you think it's worth it? These are some dark ones' personality. Most likely, they are distributing money in black. Do we have a choice? She asked I. We cannot pay off the official debt, but if we can at least delay. Unofficial, maybe we'll have one chance. We need to know who we are dealing with. The next day I went to see him again, to Sebastian Vavilov. I brought to him the black book. He spoke for a long time and silently, without a single emotion on his face. He flipped through the pages, carefully studying the signatures and titles. I thought so, he said finally, closing the grapevine. Artur Igorovich. I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't. Managed to get to the bottom of it. You can find out what kind of creditor this is? I asked. The book has a title, Volga Development Group. Vavilov nodded. I'll check, but I don't think you'll like it. You'll like it. Such offices are not for that or created to make concessions. They are created to take what is theirs, with %. He promised to call as soon as Just finds out something. I waited for 2 days. This call is a death sentence. I almost didn't. I was leaving the house. Every time I go outside was torture. I saw how the ex's acquaintances are crossing over to the other side streets just to avoid saying hello to me. My social isolation was becoming absolute. The phone rang on the 3rd day, in the evening. Voice Vavilov's pipe was even drier than usual. Maya Arturovna, I have information on your request. What is this? Company? I asked, and my heart froze. This is the so-called firm One Day Dummy, registered a year and a half ago. No real activities other than financial transactions with your perfume. It doesn't work. A classic money laundering scheme or hostile takeovers. But who? What's behind her? My voice trembled. There was a pause on the line. I heard how the lawyer sighed heavily. I raised registration documents through their own channels. Founder and soul, this company has one owner, or rather one. Who is this? I whispered. To you. Does this name sound familiar? Baskakov Olympics Vasilievna. I remained silent. I just could not say a word. The air came out. Lungs. Olympics. Mother of Lazarus. My mother-in-law. This is her company. Slowly, as if hammering nails, he said. Vavilov. All these 2 years Lazar took in debt to one's own mother. He was driving perfume in debt to her. Before me. It's starting to get through. Slowly, like huge rusty millstones turn. The picture that was before, disparate pieces of a puzzle, suddenly came together to form a single monstrous canvas. This was not the revenge of one Lazarus. This was his personal initiative. It was family conspiracy, cold, calculating, stretched out over years. They acted together, mother and son. The Olympics gave money. Lazar took them along the way, stealing the budget on purchases and created a gigantic unofficial debt. Now everything fell into place. His birthday speech, immediate lawsuit, bank requirements about early repayment and rumors distributed throughout the city. All this was links of the same chain. They're not just they wanted to destroy me, they wanted to pick up the perfume, pick it up for kopecks. When the official creditor is the bank, will put it up for auction for debts, will appear sole buyer of VGA Development. Group, Olympics Company. She will buy it out my father's life's work for the sum official debt, not official. She will simply forgive herself. They all planned. They waited 10 years and now they struck. Coordinated, ruthless from all sides. I was surrounded. I'm slow hung up the telephone receiver. Name. Baskakov's Olympics echoed in head. It's not just my mother-in-law who didn't like, but a cold, calculating enemy, Spider, who spent 2 years weaving his web and now was preparing for the final fatal bite. I was sitting in a chair in the office, Vavilova, but did not see anything in front by yourself. Everything fell into place, with terrifying clarity. Their contempt, their coldness throughout the entire 10 years. This was not just the arrogance of a rich family, it was the hatred of predators for their own future victim. They waited and waited until the contract expires to pick up. All. My father, having paid Lazar $1 million, essentially bought a 10-year grace period. He bought, I'm wasting my time, stupid me on the illusion of a happy family life. Maya Arturovna. Vavilov's voice returned me into reality. I raised my voice at him, eyes. What should I do now? I asked dully. They have all the money, they have a plan, and I have a few days left before the bank takes over the building. Fight, he simply answered. Arthur Igorovich, that's not why he started all this, to make you give up. He knew that they're stronger, but he believed that you were smarter. Smarter. I felt like myself the last fool in the world. For 10 years, I lived with the enemy on the same roof, slept with him in the same bed, and nothing happened. I noticed. I left the lawyer's office and went outside, and for the first time in recent days, instead of, fear and despair began to boil rage. Cold, angry rage at Lazarus, to the Olympics, and to the father who brewed. All this mess and left me alone to sort it out. He wanted me to become strong. Fine. He will achieve this. I didn't go home. I went to the factory. This was the only place where I felt at least some connection with reality. I called Go and asked her to come. She was with me in half an hour. I told her everything. About the Olympics, about her shell company, about their family conspiracy. Edita listened. And her. The face turned to stone. Beasts, she hissed when I finished. What kind of creatures are they? This is just beyond the pale. Plan something like that? They think that we've already won, I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected from myself. They are sure that I will break down, cry, and I'll give them everything for next to nothing. They are putting pressure on. All parties, bank, court, public opinion. They want to push me into a corner so that I myself would crawl to them with white flag. But we won't give up, she picked up. Edita with fire in her eyes. We'll show them. But how, Maya? We don't have money to fight off the bank. They are not given money win. I started walking on the dusty office. Thoughts in my head before this, chaotic and panicked, began line up into some kind of logical chain. They will always have more money. So we need to hit where they are, vulnerable. And where is it? With hope asked Edita. Reputation, I answered. In our city we have a reputation. This is all. They are making me out to be incompetent, a fool who ruins her father's business and herself. Noble saviors who are ready to pick up what I'm about to drown. Us, this picture needs to be turned upside down. I stopped at the window and looked at overgrown yard. We need the city I believed in laden perfumery again, so that people remember what she was, so that they would want to save her. And how are we? Shall we do this? Let's place an ad in the newspaper. Edita chuckled skeptically. No, I turned to face her. We will show them everything. With my own eyes. We will have an open day doors. Right here at the factory. Edita, she looked at me like I was crazy. Here in this devastation, who do you want? Should I call you here? Everyone, I said myself. I was surprised by the power of my voice. Journalists, old partners of the father, influential people of the city, all those who was at my birthday party and saw mine. Humiliation. We will show them the chaos. Let's show them the heart of this place. Let's make them feel that way again. My grandfather and my father created it. Idea, which had just been born, become overgrown with details. We will not ask. Money, we will show them the heritage. We have, after all, there are still reserves of real pure ones essences that Lazarus had not yet had time to. Replace with your own chemistry. We will conduct for we'll give them a tour and tell them the story of each one. Aroma. We will remind them that Leyden Perfumery is not just a business. This part of the history of our city. This is what you can and should be proud. Edita listened, and her skepticism gradually changed passion. And then what? Well, they will come. They'll look, they'll smell. And what? And then I took a pause. I will tell them the truth. Not all of it, of course. Not about the Olympics and its company. This will only scare them. I'll tell them that perfume is deliberately led to bankruptcy and what I need, partner, investor, person who will believe in the revival of the legend and help. Fight off creditors. This is ours the only chance. Find someone who will go against the Baskakovs, play on. Local patriotism for respect for memory of my father. This is crazy, she exhaled. Edita. But it might work. That's true, it's daring that it might work. For the first time for many days I felt not just rage, but hope. A thin, timid ray light in the impenetrable darkness. We had plan. Crazy, desperate, but a plan. For the next few days we worked as possessed. Edita proved to be irreplaceable. She took on all the organizational work. Part made up guest lists. I called journalists and wrote texts for invitations. Her energy and faith in me worked wonders. I was completely immersed in the perfume business. I found old masters who worked even under his father and whom Lazar fired for. Unnecessary. They initially reacted to, I was skeptical, but when I told them about my plan, when I showed them. Black book with purchases of synthetics. In their fighting fire appeared in his eyes. They hated what Lazarus had turned into. It's their business. We sorted out the old ones to gather reserves. Fortunately, the most valuable essences were stored in a special basement, and Lazarus, apparently, just didn't care about them got there. We found several vials of the legendary aroma of the Imperial Garden, which was created by my grandfather. One of his, the scent, transported me to a blooming spring garden after the rain. We scrubbed and cleaned the workshops. We washed the copper from the still shine. We brought everything into this form so that I wouldn't be ashamed to show it to people. With every washed window, with every cleaned pile of garbage, I felt like I'm coming back to life. I was no longer there. Humiliated victim. I was the hostess. I fought for her own. In the evenings, Edita and I sat in the office, drank tea from a thermos, and made plans. I told her everything, your thoughts, all your fears and hopes. She was my only support, my confidant, the only person in the whole world that I could tell absolutely everything. You must. To give a speech, she said, strong from the heart, so that everyone in the hall I realized that you won't give up so that they saw in you not a broken woman, but her father's daughter. She helped me compose the speech. We chose the words together, built them phrases. She supported me when I broke down, when it seemed to me that everything is pointless and nothing will work. It will work, she said firmly. Let's make them believe. Open day, the doors were scheduled for the end of the week. The invitations had been sent out. Several local journalists confirmed their participation. We had only 2 days, on the last evening before we stayed at the factory for the event. Until late. It was necessary to place candles, prepare fragrance samples, again check everything. We finished after midnight. I felt wildly tired, but at the same time, it's also intoxicating inspiration. I had a chance. Well, that's it, she said, Edita, looking around the transformed workshop. Now everything depends on tomorrow. I'll go. I need at least a couple of hours to sleep. And you? I'll stay a little longer, I answered. I want to be here alone. Silence. She hugged me. Everything will be okay, she whispered. I believe in you. See you in the morning. She left. I'm still with I wandered around the noisy hall for half an hour, breathing in aromas, getting ready for tomorrow's fight. Then she turned off the light and went outside. The night was quiet and cool. I closed the heavy door and turned the key. In the castle, I got into my car and already I was about to start the engine when I saw the headlights of a car leaving the village, neighboring street. She was driving from where our industrial area was ending and an elite cottage village began. The village where the largest and most beautiful Olimpiada Baskakova lived in the mansion. The car turned under the streetlight, and for a second I saw her clearly. It was Edita's car, and she was sitting behind the wheel, herself. She was driving from my house mother-in-law, from the house of my main enemy. A cold that has nothing to do with the night coolness shackled me from the tips, fingers to the very heart. This couldn't happen, B. Just a coincidence. Maybe she went to see someone else. And there are many people living in this village. But in 2 a.m., the day before the decisive battle, I watched them retreat red lights of her car, an array of light, the hope that burned so brightly within me. The whole last day started slowly to fade away painfully. I started the engine and I went home. I tried all the way. Find a logical explanation. Maybe she has, does your friend live there? Maybe she went borrow money. For me, you never know. I clung to these thoughts like a drowning man's straw. I forced myself to believe in them because if Adita, traitor, then I remained completely one. Absolutely alone in this world where everyone I loved either lied to me, or they plotted against me. I didn't sleep all night. I lay and looked at the ceiling, and the terrible thought returned again and again. Her participation, her advice, her assistance in speech preparation. She knew every step I take, every plan I make. If she's with them, then they know everything too. In the morning, I felt like I hadn't slept week. But today was the decisive day. I couldn't allow myself to become depressed. I got up, took an ice cold shower, put on a strict but elegant dress, made hair and makeup. I looked at mine, reflection in the mirror. Pale face, dark circles under the eyes, but in the look steel. Today I will either win, or I will lose everything completely. At 11 a.m., I was at the factory. Old masters, the ones I called, were already there. They were worried, glancing at him every now and then. Watch. Everything was ready in the main workshop. Tables with samples of essences, light snacks, candles. The air was filled subtle, multi-layered aroma. Everything was perfect. She arrived exactly at noon. Edita. She was fresh and energetic in a beautiful business suit. Well, what about you? Are you ready to fight? She asked cheerfully, hugging. I forced myself to smile. Ready. The hugs felt cold to me. I looked at her and searched in her eyes. At least some sign of a lie, but not found. She was self-confident and participation. Maybe I really was. Yesterday I was wrong. I wanted to believe it so much. At exactly 1 o'clock in the afternoon, guests began to arrive. Journalists from 2 local cities arrived, newspapers. The director of the regional studies department came. Museum, an elderly intelligent man who knew my father well. We've arrived several of my father's old business partners, who looked at me with curiosity and a bit of sympathy. In total, there were gathered about 20 people. Not many, but they were exactly that. Those people whose opinion carried weight in the city. Among the guests, I saw Sebastian Vavilov. He stood modestly against the wall, silently watching what was happening. I pulled myself together and started. I spent them through the workshops, telling the story factories. I showed them the old ones. Devices. She told me how my grandfather, I searched the world for unique recipes, aromas. The masters opened the bottles with the purest essences, and throughout the hall waves of smells swept through. It's tart bergamot, sometimes sweet vanilla, sometimes bitter sagebrush. People listened with interest. The tension on their faces changed surprise and even admiration. The plan worked. They saw not ruins, but sleeping legend. The culmination of the excursion was supposed to become the main distillery, heart of perfume apparatus, huge copper alembic in which right now fresh was cooked over low heat a batch of our most valuable essence on. Based on a rare variety of white iris, the cost was comparable to the cost gold. These were almost all of ours remaining liquid assets. The demonstration of the distillation process was to be a spectacular finale before my speech. We approached alembic. He gurgled quietly, releasing through a thin tube of fragrant steam. And here it is, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what I started with. Pride, our main treasure. And at that moment there was a loud, sharp sound, a crack, as if a thick one had burst glass bottle. Everyone shuddered. From under the copper dome of the alembic, from somewhere below, suddenly a thick rain began to fall. Acrid smoke. It was not white and fragrant and dirty gray. And it didn't smell like flowers, but with rubber and some disgusting stuff. Chemistry, one of the masters screamed, and rushed to the device, trying to block its steam supply valve. But it was too late. The smoke was billowing more and more, filling the workshop. People started coughing, covering their faces with scarves. Beautiful, the atmosphere we created with difficulty was destroyed in 1 second. Sweet aromas mingled with disgusting stench. Holiday turned into a disaster. What happened? Someone from the guests shouted. The master, pale as a sheet, turned around to me. Crack! In the cooling coil, crack. The pressure jumped and the oil came out. Technical circuit got inside. Right in 10. I looked at him and the full horror slowly dawned on me what happened. The entire batch of priceless essence of white iris was destroyed, poisoned by stinking industrial oil. It wasn't just a failure of the event, it was a complete financial collapse. We lost the last thing we had. The guests began to retreat towards the exit in panic. The journalists took out their cameras and started clicking, filming this chaos, this shame. I stood in the middle of a smoky workshop, and the ground was slipping out from under my feet. This the end, complete and final. I looked not just incompetent, I looked ridiculous. I saw a face, Edith. It had horror written on it and sympathy. She rushed towards me. May, what a nightmare this is. This is just terrible. But I didn't believe her anymore. A crack in the old, reliable, time-tested device. Right on the day of the presentation, an hour before everything, worked perfectly. This is not could have been an accident. It was sabotage, diversion. And in this, the moment when I just wanted to sit on the floor and burst into tears, it woke up in me again. That cold fury. They wanted to see me broken. They won't wait. I went out in center of the hall. The smoke gradually cleared, but the stench remained. I beg your pardon, ladies and gentlemen, one moment of attention, I shouted, as loud as she could. People, already those crowded at the exit, stopped and turned around. What you just? We saw it, I said, and my voice he was trembling, but not from tears, but from anger. This not an accidental breakdown. This is sabotage. This, another attempt to destroy my work father. There was silence in the hall. You know my story. You know that. Happened on my birthday. You heard the rumors that are being spread around to the city that I can't cope. Now you see it. They are not just they spread rumors, they act. They break equipment and destroy valuables, raw materials. They do everything to make this factory never work again. They want take it, trample it, and build on it in its place as another faceless shopping center. I spoke, and the words came by themselves. It was not the speech we had prepared, Idita. It was a cry from the heart. But I don't. I'll give up. I glanced around at their faces. I am alive. Laden perfumery will live, even if I have to start all over again, zero, in a scorched field. It's my business, families. This is the history of our city, and I do not. I'll let the Boskokovs destroy it. I finished. There was silence for a few seconds, and then the director of the museum, the same old man, the intellectual, suddenly began to applaud. First one, then he joined him someone else. The applause was thin, unsure, but they were there. I saw in the eyes of some people there is no pity, but respect. But I understood it was just moral victory. Financially it was complete failure. No investor after such a disgrace. There could not be speeches. The event was disrupted. Guests separated. The journalists left after receiving sensational material for their articles. Only I, Idita, and the old masters remained, and Sebastian Vavilov. I don't understand how this could have happened, he lamented. Chief Master, I personally checked everything in the morning. The serpentine was in perfect condition. Condition. This could only happen if you hit him with something. I am strong looked at Edita. She looked away. In the evening, Vavilov took me home. We rode in complete silence. When we drove up to my house, he was in no hurry. Say goodbye. I was at your event, he said, looking straight ahead. You carried yourself with dignity. Your father, I would be proud of you. What's the point? I answered lifelessly. I lost everything. The last money was burned in this damn device. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, the bank will put the building up for auction. It's over. The lawyer turned to me. The face was more serious than ever. Not that's it, he said quietly. Your father was a very difficult person, Maya Arturovna. He knew how to calculate his moves in advance, like a genius chess player. He reached into his old leather briefcase, and I took out another sealed one from there. An envelope exactly like the one with by letter. There was one more clause in the will, secret. He told me to open this envelope and announce its contents only in one case. In which one? I asked, without understanding anything. If your attempts save the case face deliberate malicious interference on the part of family members. This is literally written in will. What happened today? This is it, the most intervention. And we have 20 witnesses, including the press. This enough to launch this item. Your father foresaw this option as well. He left one more secondary for you, inheritance, in case of their betrayal. I looked at the sealed envelope in Vavilov's hands, and his heart is racing. It started pounding. Another legacy. More one point in this devilish will, my father. Even after his death, he continued pulling the strings, continued his complex game that was incomprehensible to me. What's there? I exhaled. Money? Shares? Much more better, the lawyer replied, and in the corners, his lips, for the first time in our entire time. A shadow of a smile flashed through the conversation. There it is, that cannot be arrested, frozen, or steal. There is earth under your feet. He opened the envelope and handed it to me. Document. It was an official letterhead from registration chamber with water signs and blue seal. Certificate of property rights. I ran my eyes over the lines. Address, Industrial Street, house number 7. That is address of the perfumery. And in the owner column. My name was Ladina Maya Arturovna. I read it and couldn't believe my eyes. But how? Everyone always thought that we rent this building from the city. Lazarus so spoke. Father never. Your father was. Master of disinformation when it was need to. Vavilov interrupted me. He bought it out. The municipality will have this building for another 15 years. Back. Quietly, through a shell company, which he later liquidated. Designed deals so that no one in town knew about it. I didn't know. All these years he paid taxes on property through a third-party account in another region. For everyone, including Baskakov, perfumery was just tenant, and only in case proven sabotage on the part of the family the ownership of the building was to move on to you. Today, this case, it's time. I dropped the document. The head was going all around. This changed everything. Absolutely everything. The bank could take away the equipment for debts, accounts, even the name Laden Perfumery. But he couldn't take the building, which did not belong to him. It wasn't pledged. It was mine personally. Baskakov's, arranging sabotage to devalue my business and take it for debts without knowing it. They put the most powerful weapon into my hands. They thought they were knocking it out from under me like stool, but in fact, they untied my hands. What does this mean in practice? I asked, trying to cope with emotions. This means, said Vavilov, and his eyes sparkled that legal. Face, Laden Perfumery, burdened debts, and the building in which it is located. These are two different things. And you, as the owner of the building, you have full the right to terminate the lease agreement an unscrupulous tenant, that is, with by itself, or rather, with that company, which you currently control. Plan was born in my head instantly. Clear, bold, and deadly simple. I'm evicting Laden Perfumery from my place buildings, I said, my voice ringing. From suddenly acquired power. I terminate agreement. And the company? I'm bankrupting the company. Let the bank take the old equipment and Lazarus's debts. Let the Olympics remain with their unofficial loans, which she will now never return. I'm in my own clean building. I will open a new company. From scratch. Without. Single debt. That's exactly what it is. That's what your father was counting on, Vavilov nodded. This was his backup plan. Burnt out plan land. That night, for the first time in a long time, I was sleeping. A few hours, but it was. Deep sleep, without nightmares. I woke up with a clear sense of purpose. I was no longer there a victim who was driven into a corner. Now, I was a hunter. The next day, in the morning, Vavilov and I prepared everything necessary papers. Notification of, termination of the lease agreement and requirements, vacate the premises immediately. Advocate offered to send it by mail, but I refused. No, I said. This I will hand over the document personally. I knew where to look for him. Lazar moved into his own bachelor apartment, which he kept even before our wedding. Luxurious apartments in a new building in the center. Cities. I arrived there by noon, took the elevator up to the 10th floor, rang the doorbell. It was for a few seconds. Silence. Then I heard footsteps. Door he opened. Lazarus. He was at home, silk-robed, disheveled, but with the same smug grin on his face. He wasn't surprised to see me. He enjoyed the moment. And here it is, the losing side, he drawled, lazily. That she came to ask for mercy, I am ready to accept my terms. I can still do it, agree to a settlement, if you will. Panka. He leaned against the door jamb, looking me up and down. He expected tears, pleading, hysteria. He wanted to see me crushed. I am silent, looked into his eyes, and then held out. He was given a sheet of paper folded in 4. This is for you, I said evenly. He grinned, took the paper, casually unfolded it, and started reading. I saw. As a smug expression slowly slides off his face, the grin disappeared. The eyebrows met at the bridge of the nose. He reread the document again, then picked it up. He looked at me, confused and uncomprehending. Sight. What is this? He asked in this way, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Which lease agreement? What eviction? You. Have you gone crazy? This is a city building. Already, no, I answered, and every word gave me pleasure. It's been gone for 15 years. It belongs to me. And I'm evicting your debt pit from mine buildings. You have 24 hours to clean up. From there, everything that belongs to the company. After that's why I changed the locks. His face turned purple. He understood. He realized what? They made a terrible mistake. He realized that their brilliant plan had just collapsed. You can't, he shouted. It's illegal. Absolutely, it's legal, I retorted. You can consult with your mom or with her lawyers. They will confirm. Game over, Lazarus. You lost. I turned around to leave. I said everything, what I wanted. I saw on his face what I wanted to see. Shock, rage, and impotence. My revenge was almost complete. I had already taken a step towards the elevator when I heard. Behind his back, there was laughter. It was not a fun one laughter. It was hysterical, evil laughter. I turned around. He stood in the doorway, waving my notice. There was a bad, crazy glint in his eyes. Fire in my building, he hissed, choking laughter. Do you think this is your building? What a naive fool you are, Maya. You before I still don't understand anything. He disappeared into apartment, and a second later came back out, holding some document in his hands. He came up close to me and shoved it at me under the nose. Red, he growled. Red. Heiress. It was a contract purchase and sale. To that very building at the address Industrial 7, I saw the signature her father, and next to her another. Signature and seal. The contract was dated 5 years earlier, and in it, black and white, was written that Arthur Layden sold 50% of the building. Half. I raised eyes on the buyer's name, from which made me feel dark again. Eyes. Baskakova's buyer, Olympics Vasilievna. My mother, co-owner. Lazar jumped out in my face. 50/50ths. It's been 5 years already, so you haven't brought anyone out of there. You'll evict me because half of this land, half of each brick in this our wall. And now we will decide. What will be there, not you? Can't be, I whispered. He would never. Sold her a centimeter of this. Land. Your father was a businessman, Maya. Lazar grinned maliciously as he cleaned up paper. And my mother did it to him. An offer he couldn't refuse. Money solves everything. Are you still? I haven't understood this yet. He slammed the door. Right in front of my nose, the lock clicked. I was left alone in the empty corridor, stunned, broken. My most powerful, the weapon proved useless. I couldn't evict them. I was locked in with them, one cell. I went downstairs and sat down. The car and just sat there, staring blankly at steering wheel. Signature. She looked real. I have seen my father's signature hundreds of times. This a sweeping, confident grove. Really? Did he deceive me here too? Is it really him? The plan was even more complex and confusing, and this was selling part of it. Either or, did the Baskakovs deceive him? No, it was impossible. My father could not be deceived in business. I went to Vavilov. I burst into his without knocking. She threw a copy on the table contract that I managed to. Take a photo with your phone while Lazarus shook it. What is this? I asked, barely restraining myself. The old lawyer looked at it for a long time in silence, the image on my phone screen increasing and decreasing it. On his face, not a single muscle twitched. It's a fake, he finally said, calmly and confidently. Are you sure? I asked with desperate hope. Signature. She looks so similar. This is very high-quality fake. He took off his glasses. But I know your father's handwriting better than. Your own? I worked with him for 40 years. There are microscopic details which cannot be copied. Tilt, pressure at specific points. I am sure that the examination will confirm this. For a second, my heart felt relieved. Fake, so I was right. But Vavilov immediately dispelled my joy. However, it's too early to rejoice, Maya Arturovna. Proving that it is a fake will take a long time. We will have to file a lawsuit, appoint a handwriting examination. It will take months, maybe a year. And you don't have this time. He was right. There will be trials, Baskakovs as legal. Co-owners will block any of my actions. I won't be able to evict anyone, nothing to sell, nothing to start. I will find myself in a legal deadlock, and every day idle time will bring me losses. After 3 months, when the term expires, I will be the full heir indicated in the will bankruptcy, and they won't even have to do anything due. Everything will go to the creditors anyway. This fake contract was perfect a tool to paralyze me, tie hand and foot, and calmly wait for my death. They will file a counterclaim. Claim, Vavilov continued. Reasoning out loud, they will declare their rights to management. They will demand it through the court, appoint their own director. And they have it, it will work out, because they have it on hand a document that was pending a court decision. It is considered valid. We'll get stuck in this. Quagmire is dead. I came out of it as the cabinet is even more desperate than earlier. It's one thing to fight the enemy. It's quite another thing to fight with him. A ghost on paper, with a lie that almost impossible to refute quickly. The Baskakovs did not keep us waiting long. The very next day, it came to me an official paper from their lawyers. To me, it was forbidden to onde.